3 games into his NHL career, Gabe Perau is a healthy scratch. Is Peter Laviolette just trolling us?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1286 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers lose again to the Flyers 8-5. They are pushed to the brink of elimination as it pertains to the playoff chase, but we've known for a while that the playoffs just are not going to happen. To me, the biggest story before, during, and after this game was the fact that Peter Laviolette decided to make Gabe Perreault a healthy scratch just 3 games into his NHL career. You know, there are so few reasons to watch the Rangers right now. I got to watch them. I've got the podcast here. And some people will go down with the ship and they'll watch them until the bitter end. And if you're one of those fans, more power to you, for sure. You know, you deserve your props for that and hang in through what I think is one of the worst seasons in franchise history. When you consider what the expectations were versus where this team has ended up, I don't think that's a stretch at all to say that. But there are a couple of reasons to keep watching, right? We got to find out, what these young kids have and can they develop chemistry together, and how are we looking for next season, and who's going to be part of this thing and who's not. But apparently we can't even have that because Peter Laviolette decided to make Gabe Perreault a healthy scratch in favor of Brett Berard. Here's an idea. Maybe play both of them. Wild stuff, right? Lost season, maybe get a couple of looks at, your young players, the guys that you're counting on to develop and, obviously become cornerstones of this New York Ranger franchise. But no, Peter Laviolette. And to answer my question right at the intro there, no, I don't believe he's actually trolling the fans, but I feel like he's going to be stubborn right until the very end. And this is what Peter Laviolette had to say about the decision. These are pregame quotes on scratching Gabe Perreault. He says, "We're going to put Berard back in the lineup. So again, 12 forwards coming in. I think for a young player, especially straight out of college, there's going to be times, I think, where you can teach him and show him and let him watch and learn and practice and play in some games as well, where he's had good impact in the game, where the impact can be more." And then he was asked if there's any increased urgency to assess Perreault, given that, there's only so many games left in the season. That's what Laviolette had to say about that. No, when we go back and look at the game, coaches sit down and go through things with him. I think it's a learning process for young players, whether it be practice, games, video, watching, could be a combination of all of it. Big step coming out of college and right into a lineup. What does any of this mean? Just play the kid. I know there's some people, myself included, that were hoping that maybe it wouldn't happen until the fall as far as Gabe Perreault signing his ELC, because he signs now, he burns the first year of the ELC, which isn't ideal for the Rangers. But as is the case with these young prospects, when they get out of college and they're looking to sign their ELC, they tend to have a lot of leverage because they could always threaten to go back to college for another year, and then you don't have them at all the following season. Or they could ask for a trade. These players certainly, the business side of it, I'm sure, is somewhat under consideration for Perreault and his camp. Let's do the first year of the ELC right now. But on top of that, they just want to play. I mean, you've got a chance. You're 19 years old to play in the NHL. Are you kidding me? Who's not going to jump at that opportunity, especially at that young age? So I get it from Perreault's side, but this is all too predictable. I'd love to sit here and say that I'm surprised, I'm shocked by this, that Laviolette would make the first round pick a healthy scratch. It's not at all surprising, especially based on what we've seen down the stretch here and how he just keeps rolling with the veterans. The guys, not all of them, but a lot of them, who decide effort is optional on a night in and night out, game in and game out basis. And the other thing that kind of popped into my head once I saw that Gabe Perreault was indeed going to be a healthy scratch was that, and this is the first time I've ever felt this way in my history as a Ranger fan, and really any of the other sports too, my thought was, I cannot wait for this team to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. First time I've ever felt that way. Usually I'm rooting for them right until the bitter end, even in a sad, sorry season like this. Here's why. There's actually some logic behind it. It's not just because, I'm tired of these guys, they deserve to be eliminated. I mean, that's all true too. But the big reason is you've got a situation here where they're clinging to this delusional belief that they might still get into the playoffs. And because of that, or at least largely because of that, the guys that are going to suffer are the young players, whether that's Brandon Othmann having to play on the fourth line, whether that's Gabe Perau having to be a healthy scratch, whether that's Brett Berard being a healthy scratch and now gets back into the lineup, barely gets any ice time. The young guys, the guys that are hungry, the guys that we need to assess and get them as much game action as possible in a lost season here, those are the ones that suffer. Those are the ones that pay the price. So that's why I want the Rangers to get this over with. And that could happen as soon as tonight, because with the loss of the Flyers last night, this is the situation. Rangers and Canadiens both have 4 games left. The only chance the Rangers have to make the playoffs, the Rangers must go 4-0 and the Canadiens must go 0-4. And even if the Canadiens lose the game in overtime, that's still enough to eliminate the Rangers. So it's not going to happen. Might as well get it over with. Have the Rangers lose to the Islanders tonight. And then at that point, what excuses are they left with? What excuses can Peter Laviolette possibly throw at us in terms of his reasoning for not playing Gabe Perreault, making Othmann a healthy scratch, doing this, doing that? Just at that point, all the veterans should be sat down, healthy scratch, or put them on IR, do whatever you got to do, and play as much of these young guys as possible. Because, again, there's so few things right now that are interesting, exciting, likable about this Ranger team, but the young players are one of them. Or if you want to look at Berard, Perreault, and Othmann together, 3 of them, right? You know, at least we get a glimpse into the future. We see what they can do. These kids get a taste of NHL hockey, especially Perreault, because he just got here and he needs this experience. I still say the best place for him to start next year is Hartford, but playing in the remaining Ranger games, that's at least going to be beneficial. At least he has an idea of what the NHL is like. And then you let him hopefully tear it up with Hartford next year. And once he's ready, you call him up to the Rangers and it's showtime. And it'll probably be with a different coach other than Peter Laviolette. But, you know, that's, again, just kind of par for the course this year. All of this is not unexpected in the slightest. I just think it's ridiculous. I think Perreault is shown enough. I mean, if you listen to Laviolette in his comments and you try to make some sense out of them, it seems like the idea is more that, like, well, again, college player, we don't want to overwhelm him. It's good to have him watch some things from the press box. What do you think Gabe Perreault learned watching this game from the press box last night, seeing the Rangers lose to the long since dead and buried Philadelphia Flyers 8-5? What do you think Gabe Perreault learned from all that? No idea, but it is what it is. This is where we're at right now, and none of this should really be surprising to anybody. I just hope he's back out there tonight. I've been too scared to check social media because I feel like they're going to scratch him again. And then, like I said, hopefully this team can just eliminate itself. That can be the end of it. And then at least for the final 3 games, there'd be no excuse not to play the young kids and give them significant ice time. Anyway, going to keep everything going in just a second. There was at least one nice, enjoyable thing about last night's game, and that was the fact that we got to see Sam Rosen and John Davidson call a game together for the first time in, I think they said, close to 20 years. And now for the last time, as Sam Rosen will be very soon wrapping up, as an NHL announcer. So, and the announcer of the New York Rangers. So we will talk about them together in just a second.
Do you have trouble sleeping? If so, you're not alone. That used to be me, lacking rest, tossing and turning. I was late for meetings. I never felt like myself. That's until I found Bare Mattress. Bare Mattress and their sleep recovery technology helped me fall asleep faster, as well as enjoy deeper sleeps. I felt like myself again, and you can too. Bare Mattress knows that every sleeper is different. That's why they have their sleep quiz on their website that finds you your perfect match. As a side sleeper, I matched with the Elite Hybrid Mattress, and I've been telling everyone in my life they have to try Bare Mattress risk-free. You can sleep on your Bare Mattress up to 120 nights, and if you're not getting the best sleep of your life, you can get it refunded. They'll pick it up with absolutely no hassle. So go to bearmattress.com and use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, so a big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for sticking with this podcast throughout this wonderful season that we're having here. In our next episode, for the everydayers, you're going to come back for the next one. Going to be talking about whatever happens between the Rangers and the Islanders a little bit later tonight. The puck drops at 7:30 for that one. But for right now, rather than go mistake for mistake and defensive breakdown for defensive breakdown from this game that happened, obviously, last night, I figure we might as well turn our attention to something that was actually kind of nice, and that was the aforementioned reunion between Sam Rosen and John Davidson in the booth. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, there aren't really a ton of reasons to watch this Ranger team right now, and Peter Laviolette took one of them away in last night's game because he made Gabe Perau a healthy scratch. But he couldn't take this one away. We had Sam Rosen and JD one final time in the booth together. And per both of them, it's been about 20 years since they were in the booth together. And, for a lot of us, this is our first exposure to hockey. It was with Sam Rosen and John Davidson. They were together for about 20 years as partners, for MSG. And I think that that spans obviously a long time range. And so that means there's a lot of people, some who are older than me, some who are younger than me, some right about my age, where this was our beginning. This is our beginning for NHL hockey, for Rangers hockey. We knew Sam Rosen and John Davidson. They were synonymous with the Rangers. Then obviously, John Davidson got back into the business side of hockey, and he's been doing that ever since. But it was great to see him, obviously back in the booth with Sam Rosen. And unfortunate, obviously, that it comes under these circumstances. I think that a lot of us figured around this time we'd just be wondering who the Ranger playoff opponent was going to be. And unfortunately, obviously, that's not the case. But it's really nice to see them back together. Like I said, and 2 decades is obviously a long time. JD, right from the top, said that he was honored and excited. And Sam actually thanked John Davidson for, he said, teaching him everything. So that's obviously a very nice thing for him to say. And one of the best compliments that I can pay the two of them as far as like their performance in the booth last night is that it wasn't more than a couple minutes in the game that I almost kind of forgot about it. Like, obviously, it's there. I hear it. I hear Sam Rosen. I hear John Davidson. But the two of them just went right back into it like they'd been calling games together for all this time. And granted, they were together for a long time in the past, but it's a long time ago, more than 20 years, and they didn't miss a beat. That chemistry was still there. That camaraderie was still there. That friendship is still there. All the things that I think made them such a fun and likable duo for Ranger fans. It was all right there. And it's nice to see them, again, just kind of doing their thing. John Davidson told an interesting story. Obviously, he was with Panarin when they were both with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Panarin was only there for 2 seasons. But John Davidson, I feel like I kind of knew this story about Panarin, but I've never heard it really kind of laid out the way that JD did here. So Panarin grew up in Russia, obviously, and wasn't necessarily a great neighborhood. That's per John Davidson's telling of this story. But Panarin, even as a kid, would have to take the bus to get to the rink. And he had skates, but they were way too big to the point that Panarin actually had to wear a pair of shoes inside of his skates just so that, obviously they would fit for him a little bit better. But Davidson spoke very, very highly of Panarin, and that's obviously awesome. And they also showed a stat right around this time, most points by active, undrafted NHL players. And Panarin's got quite the lead here. He's got 864 points. In second place, our former friend, or still our friend. What am I saying here? He's still our friend, of course, but former New York Ranger Matt Zuccarello with 684 points. And by the way, when the playoffs do start, Minnesota Wild all the way for me for one reason. Matt Zuccarello is on that team, and that man needs a Stanley Cup. Given the career that he's had, everything he's been through, that would be amazing to see. But that will be the team that I'm pulling for. And then third is Jonathan Marchessault. And again, a pretty significant drop, 539 points for Marchessault. And JD also made a very interesting hockey point about Panarin. And it's one of those things, like, I feel like we're all like somewhat aware of it, but maybe we don't think about it that much. You talk about Panarin's lack of size, and that's true. I mean, facts are facts. He's not as big as a lot of the guys on the rink. But this is what John Davidson said about it. He's not that big, but do you ever see him get knocked over? There's just something about his balance. And that is very true. Panarin is somebody who I think most nights is still giving you an honest effort. And I think that I've mentioned this in the past. He is willing to mix it up. We talked about this a couple of games back when Panarin, had that awesome game against the Minnesota Wild, had the overtime game-winning assist to Vincent Trocheck. And, Panarin doesn't necessarily go out there looking for trouble. Far from it. But if one of his guys gets jumped, if one of his teammates gets jumped, or one of his teammates decides to mix it up and stir the pot a little bit, Panarin gets in there pretty quickly. He doesn't shy away from that kind of stuff either. Doesn't necessarily look for it, but certainly does not shy away from it either. And there are other Rangers that, in a similar situation probably would do exactly that. And we don't have to name names right now, but I'm sure you guys can come up with at least a few of them. I mentioned again that I'm looking forward to when the Rangers get mathematically eliminated. And that is still true. Like, I hope it happens, honestly, as soon as tonight, because they're not going to make the playoffs anyway. And I think what's more important now is getting minutes to the kids. But I will say, I'm glad that last night the Rangers could not be mathematically eliminated. I'm glad that was not the very end of it last night, because, man, that would be we've been waiting for 20 years, some of us, to see Sam and John Davidson back together calling a game. And do you really want to see it happen on the night where the Rangers get eliminated and we know for a fact that they're not going to make the playoffs? I'm out on that. So I'm glad that didn't happen, and the Rangers at least couldn't ruin that. I mean, they ruined the reunion by giving up 8 goals, and yeah, 2 of them were empty netters, but so what? I mean, the Rangers were abysmal in the third period. And it just stings that we're not going to get Sam Rosen calling any more playoff games, because he would have had, if the Rangers had made the playoffs this season, I'm telling you right now, Sam Rosen would have had at least one more big call, borderline iconic call, or absolutely iconic call left in the tank had the Rangers made the playoffs. Because one of his best calls ever, I've got this in the top 5, I would say at least, is only from 3 seasons ago. Rangers, Penguins, round 1, game 7, in overtime. Panarin gets the overtime winner, and Sam Rosen, Panarin, he shoots, he scores, Rangers win. That was awesome. That's one of my all-time favorites, and I'm telling you, man, he would have had one more in him for sure. Just unfortunate that the Rangers didn't really give him anything to work with this season as a whole, or last night when he was back with John Davidson. And, all this kind of begs the question, can Sam just come back for one more year? I mean, can we make that happen? Would that be possible? Because he just can't go out like this. I mean, there's better ways to go out than what we're seeing this season, obviously. Then again, you think about the Rangers and their overall history, and, the fact that Sam Rosen is winding down right now. Maybe in a way this is kind of poetic, because really think about what the Rangers are. The Rangers are a franchise of it was nice while it lasted kind of moments. This era of Ranger hockey, the 3 playoff appearances the last 3 seasons, the 2 runs to the Eastern Conference Final, the fact that we thought they had a shot at it for 2 of the last 3 seasons, all of that seems to be coming to an end right now. We'll see if they're able to retool and rebuild on the fly, basically, going into next season. But, you think about, obviously, Sam Rosen, and he's had all these moments. We as a fan base have had all these moments together with Sam Rosen, whether we're talking about, obviously, the 1994 Stanley Cup win, the 3-1 series comebacks, 2 against the Penguins, 1 against the Caps. I mentioned Panarin Game 7 overtime, Derek Stepan Game 7 overtime, the Henrik Lundqvist shutout of the Canadiens to put the Rangers into the Stanley Cup Finals. There's a whole bunch of great moments that Sam Rosen has gotten to call over the years, a lot more than a lot of other teams would probably give to him. But it just never ends in the big one, except for 94, obviously. And so maybe it's poetic that it ends this way. Sam Rosen gets to see one of the best seasons, one of the most fun seasons I can ever remember as a Ranger fan last year. And I'm sure Sam would tell you probably one of his favorite seasons as well, to whatever this nonsense is that we're getting this year. Everything just did a complete 180. The current Ranger of Ranger hockey is basically just getting short-circuited. And this is where we're at now. So in a way, I'd love for it to be better for Sam Rosen on his way out the door. And I stand by what I said earlier this season, that these players all owe him a personal apology, as they do to us, the fans. But be that as it may, this is kind of how it goes with the Rangers. Things are up and then they're down and then they're back up, and you think they can make a run, and they do make a run, but they don't win the cup, and then it falls apart again. This is basically just how it goes, and we're just kind of at that specific spot on the roller coaster. And unfortunately, it just happens to coincide with, obviously Sam Rosen's final season as the Ranger play-by-play man. But going to keep everything rolling just a second. There was also kind of a, I would say a feel-good story coming out of this game, or rather going into this game, and that is Jonny Brodzinski up for the Masterton trophy. We're going to talk about that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers brought to you by wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. The satisfying crunch of opening each shell, it is like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, wonderful pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about Jonny Brodzinski and the fact that he was nominated. He's the Ranger nominee for this year's Bill Masterton Trophy. Basically, this is an award that's been around for quite some time. A handful of Rangers have won it in the past, most recently Dominic Moore in the 2013-2014 season. I think Brodzinski's a great choice as far as the Ranger nominee is concerned. All 32 teams get to nominate one player. Rangers are obviously going with Brodzinski. I will explain why in just a second. But first, I wanted to acknowledge a comment that I saw in a recent episode that I posted on YouTube that I thought was pretty funny. Somebody basically commented, because I've been speaking very highly of Brodzinski this season. I'll continue to do so right until the bitter end here. This season has been basically a complete wasteland as far as like positives, right? A complete wasteland of positives. But guys overperforming or guys going out there and giving you an honest effort every single night. There hasn't been a lot of that. Jonny Brodzinski is one of those positive spots, and he is one of those guys that's giving you, an honest effort every night. But the comment basically on YouTube said something like, man, it's going bad when there's a segment in every episode praising Jonny Brodzinski. And I saw that and I laughed quite a bit. And I'm thinking like, yeah, maybe we'll tone it back a little bit. But hey, Jonny Brodzinski just got nominated for an award. And like I said, there aren't really a whole lot of positives this season. So we might as well talk about this a little bit. Once again, the Bill Masterton Trophy. And this is the verbiage as it's described, on the NHL.com page for it. It is awarded annually to the NHL player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to ice hockey. So going by that verbiage and what we know this award is made to represent, like I said, it's been around for a very long time. Can anybody show me a Ranger player that better fits that description than Jonny Brodzinski? I don't really think that there is. You're talking about somebody here who did not become an NHL regular until last season at the age of 30. And it's crazy because he, by his own admission, he was talking about this when they were interviewing about this before the game, did not think when he signed with the Rangers that he had any real future as part of, the NHL roster. Didn't really know if he was ever going to get a chance to play for the Rangers. And he's been here for 5 years, if you can believe that. Jonny Brodzinski has played now in parts of 5 different seasons with the New York Rangers. He's under contract for next year as well. And you look at this, you go year by year from least recent to most recent. His role has gradually expanded in that time. His first year, 5 games with the Rangers. The rest was with the Wolfpack. Second year, 22 games. Then a little bit of a step back, 17 games the year after that. Then last year, 57 games. And now this year, he'll probably end up with 51 games, assuming that he plays in the remainder of the games down the stretch here. And again, did Brodzinski really have any competition for this award? It's kind of similar to Will Cooley winning the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. I mean, you could make a case for a couple other guys, and we did. We talked about that a little bit on this show, but very clearly, Will Cooley was the best choice to win that award this season. And the same thing with the Mr. Ranger Award that Jonathan Quick just won a couple of games ago for leadership. Who else are you going to give it to? There's even fewer candidates for that one. And it's kind of the same thing here with Brodzinski and, overcoming adversity and dedication to hockey and all that. I don't know who else you would give it to if it's a player on the Rangers, who else the nominee should be. And to be completely fair, this is an award where I guess in some ways it might be a good thing that the Rangers don't have a ton of strong candidates for this, because we've seen this award go to players that, overcame a horrific injury. You wouldn't want that to happen to any of these players on the Rangers, or, the passing of a loved one. Certainly we would never want that to happen to anybody. Or, addiction. There's been a couple of cases where somebody has battled addiction and then come back, to win this award. So we don't wish any of that on anybody. But I do think it's pretty telling that, part of this award is just for dedication to ice hockey. So that means that not necessarily something terrible has to happen. It's just dedication to the sport. And again, Jonny Brodzinski is the clear-cut choice for this. I don't know who else you would give it to based on that kind of verbiage. I mean, you could make a case for some other people, but I think Jonny's the guy. And if you ever have some time to kill, you're just, waiting for the next Ranger game, waiting for the next Ranger loss. If you want to do something that will just make your head spin, go on the Jonny Brodzinski transactions page. It will make you dizzy. This guy has been called up and sent down and waived and all these different things and put on a taxi squad about 1 million different times in his career. The Rangers alone, this blew my mind because I knew Brodzinski had been waived by the Rangers a couple of times. You know, at the start of a season, when you've got somebody that is not waiver exempt, they have to pass through waivers before you can sign them to your AHL team. So I knew Brodzinski had been waived a couple times by the Rangers and gone unclaimed and then gone back down to the Hartford Wolfpack. The Rangers have waived Jonny Brodzinski 5 times. 5 times he was sitting there on waivers. Anybody could have claimed him. Thankfully, I'm going to say nobody did. And he was back down with the Hartford Wolfpack being the captain there and doing whatever he has to do to, set a good example and hopefully for him work his way back to the Rangers, which he's obviously done multiple times. The most recent waiving of Jonny Brodzinski was in October of 2023. So it's been about 2.5 years. And you hope that, obviously he doesn't have to go through that again. I mean, I can't imagine that they would waive him next season and not have him on the opening night roster, given, how well he's played. But to kind of, look at everything that's happened over the last couple of years when he really became an NHL regular. Last year, again, 57 out of 82 regular season games for Jonny Brodzinski. He was active. He only played in 3 of the 16 playoff games. He was kind of a casualty after the Rangers made some moves at the deadline. You bring in Roslovic, you bring in Wenberg, and a couple of guys have to get squeezed out of the lineup. Honestly, man, looking back with how little Roslovic did, you might have been better off with Jonny Brodzinski in the lineup than Jack Roslovic. And I think if I remember correctly, Roslovic was actually a healthy scratch for at least one playoff game. But be that as it may, again, 57 out of 82 games last year for Brodzinski, 3 out of 16 playoff games. This year, again, he currently has played in 47 of the Rangers' 78 regular season games. That number probably will go to 51 out of 82, and he will play in 0 out of 0 playoff games. So we have that to look forward to as well. But yeah, I mean, good season for Brodzinski, 47 games, career high 11 goals, 7 assists, 18 points, career best +7. This despite the fact that obviously he plays exclusively just about in a bottom 6 role. He's often on the 4th line. He had the game-tying goal against the Flyers last night. We thought that might be a big one, and then the Rangers proceeded to leave in, 6 goals in the 3rd period, whatever it was. But bottom line, very, very cool for Jonny Brodzinski, obviously sticking with it. And this is a quote from Brodzinski that goes back to what I was talking about just a minute ago as far as what role he expected with the Rangers when he signed here. That's what he had to say about it. When I first signed in New York, I was fully anticipating only being an American League guy, just being a leader for the younger guys, just being a good captain down in the American League, and then found my way back to the NHL just by doing that. Was never expecting to get back to this point, but hard work and perseverance pays off. Amen to that. And like I said, this guy should absolutely be in the opening night lineup next season. Figure we can call it there. 2 other quick pieces of news here at the end of today's show. Will Cooley sets a new single-season record in hits for the Rangers. He had 5 hits last night. He had been tied with Ryan Callahan at 285, but obviously those 5 hits now put him in first place all-time for a single season with the Rangers at 290. So if I'm Will Cooley at this point, man, I got to get to 300. There's only 4 games left. Just skate around and hit everybody that moves. Why not? Hit one of your own guys while you're at it. Maybe that'll wake them up a little bit. So there's that. And then there's also the fact that Anton Bleed, who I think has played maybe like 2 games with the Rangers between this year and last year. He is re-signed with the Rangers on a new 2-year deal. Got to believe he'll be ticketed for the Hartford Wolfpack, but it's fine. I mean, you need a couple of those NHL, AHL swingmen. I know that when it comes to the AHL, people tend to be more excited about prospects than they are about, these journeyman veterans, and I completely understand that, but you need a couple of vets in the room for sure. And so, nothing wrong with this. I think it's a harmless move, and Bleed does play with some edge, so nice to see that he's going to be back next season, very likely with the Wolfpack as opposed to the Rangers. But we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. Excuse me. And I will see you next time.